Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of the Presidential Election Show. Thanks very much for tuning in once again. Great to welcome back Ryan Hunter, the in-house US politics expert at LP Brussels. Nice to see you, Ryan. And it's an absolute privilege and pleasure to welcome back on the show the Honorable Michael P Meehan. Welcome back, Michael. For those of you who don't know, and I'm sure most people do, Michael's been at the epicenter of politics, communications, and policy in Washington now for over 3 decades. You've been the Senate Chief of Staff. You've been a senior advisor to many, many politicians, including senators, including John Kerry, and many others. So we're really looking forward to both of you updating us this week on what's been going on, and in particular, looking ahead, of course, to that crucial debate that will take place in just over a week's time. And in fact, just remind everyone now, it is only just 6 weeks and a bit away from the election. It's getting pretty close. So the first question really is, looking from a European perspective, Trump doesn't seem to have had a very good few weeks. You're looking at the performance of the RNC in the media, looking at the polling. It doesn't look good for Trump. So are we missing something out here? Is it actually better on the ground for Trump than perhaps the picture would suggest? Over to you, Michael, first of all.
Well, you could argue that Joe Biden, from the moment he announced to get in, he has never been losing to Trump in any national poll. But as all of us recall, that we don't pick presidents by national polls, we pick them by the Electoral College. And so there's a study of the 15 most swing states and constantly watching those polls. Trump consistently gets 42 to 44% of the vote. There's never been a poll where he's over 46. And so he won the presidency with 46 last time because we had multiple party candidates that that took some of the vote away from Hillary, who won with 3 million more votes. So, but looking back, and if Biden ends up winning, you're going to see that this was a terribly stable race the whole time, despite the chaotic nature of which Trump runs his campaign and the presidency.
Yeah. Okay. Ryan, do you agree with that? That actually we're not missing much. That at the moment Biden is ahead, even in the swing states.
Yeah. Well, I would love that the reality would be that case, that things are looking bad and that they are bad, to be honest. But I think that the Trump campaign is really banking on these unlikely voters that would turn out. And I think we saw this in 2016, that the polls consistently missed these quote unquote silent voters. And although they claim that they've changed the methodology to incorporate them, I'm still afraid that they're missing quite a few. And I know the Trump campaign is really targeting Wisconsin to bring out these unlikely voters. And a second point is, even on the voters who we know about that will vote, who are on the fence, I just think Trump has become so normalized that when it comes to these voters determining very last minute who to swing for, they may end up going in Trump's camp.
Yeah, do you agree with that, Michael? There may be some difficulties in actually measuring these voters that don't often vote, don't participate in polling, that may show out for Trump on the day or the days leading up to it for those that postal vote.
Oh, sure. I mean, American polling is, any polling actually has got, a 5% margin of error, even once you fully field the poll. Some polls are just online. My mom's not going to answer an online poll. Most people don't, people younger than me aren't going to answer a hard line at home. So there's a bit of art and science to the polling. And that's why I said you can look back, and if Biden does in fact win, you could look back and say, wow, the race was pretty stable all along. But there is a probability. Surely people don't tell pollsters exactly how they feel. And you can see it when they do these man on the street interviews after the poll. I voted for him last time. I don't know what I'm going to do this time. Or I voted for Hillary this time, but I'm going to vote for Trump this time. And when you start listening to the anecdotal things, you just really loses your confidence in a 400-person sample, in a state.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Which cost a lot of money as well, of course. And
Yeah, and the media outlets here aren't very flush with cash, and so they tend to just do anybody who happens to answer. And when we run campaigns, we pull people off of voter files to know for sure that they're voters instead of trusting that they're voters, and that's just more expensive to do.
yeah, and are the parties carrying out their own internal polling as they would here in Europe? So the parties spend some of their money on their own polling, Michael?
Oh yeah, yeah. Both sides are doing that. And the game here is, that public poll looks like what our internal poll looks like. And
Yeah,
so,
right.
or our poll shows the race much tighter in Minnesota than that 16-point poll that the Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos, who Trump hates, says. So it must be all fake news.
So turning to the big event, one of the key milestones in the campaign. Now we've passed the national conventions, is obviously the first presidential debate, just over a week away now. Turning to you, Ryan, first, what do you think each side is going to try and get out of this this big occasion, if indeed it is a big occasion? But I think, again, looking from over here in Europe, we're expecting it to be a big event.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the debates do matter, but they, of course, matter to differing degrees to each side. Trump got away in 2016, I think, without winning a single debate. Doesn't mean he was trashed, but I don't think you could say he won a single debate, and I don't think they really affected the race. What he did do against Hillary was he was able to throw her off her game. And I think the Trump campaign is going to look to try and do the same to Joe Biden, who is, by the way, a very good debater. Everyone underestimates him. When it comes to a one-on-one debate, I would suggest everyone watches his debate against Paul Ryan in 2012 as a lesson for how to do a good debate. And I just think the Trump campaign is going to try and box Joe Biden to either disavow the progressive wing of the party or to try and disavow the moderate wing of the party, and really try and force him into a corner. And will that work? We'll see. Joe Biden's going to be challenged in a way he hasn't been for a while.
Over to you, Michael. Do you agree with that assessment that both camps will be looking to get different things out of this debate, but actually Biden may actually do better than some of us think or fear he may?
Well, Trump and his team have constantly called him Sleepy Joe and lower the expectations that he can string a sentence together. So they may have helped him on the expectation setting going into the debates, that if he just shows up, sounds not senile, therefore he will have hit the bar and moved on. I do think the debates are important, but mostly on the negative side. I think it's possible to, Biden have, if he has a lot of with his stuttering history, and if he's not able to think quickly on his feet. Trump's a reality TV show host, and these are the moments that he wants. Trump started the year out saying maybe I won't debate at all, and then spent all summer begging for more debates. So it's his chaos theory. He even goes to setting expectations for debates. But I do think that Biden showed at the convention that speech was right on for where the Biden voters wanted to see him. I mean, he showed up and delivered a nice, tight speech, looked presidential, had plans for the future, very calming influence, which in chaotic times is the Biden campaign message.
Yeah, and turning to the sort of the communications aspects of the debates. I mean, looking at the ratio of preparation against personality against performance, Michael, how would you say, how would you divvy up 100, dividing it between preparation, which, as you say, Trump claims he won't be preparing at all, though a lot of people don't believe him, his personality or their personalities, and then the performance on the night? I mean, how would you, as a comms expert, divide it up?
Well, the thing about debates is half the people won't watch it, and they'll get their information from media coverage, social and otherwise, from the debate. And if you had 50 million people watch and 140 million people vote, you still don't have people who just sit there for the 2 hours. And the people who tend to watch debates for the entire 2-hour duration or however long they are tend to already know who they're voting for by the time that they get to the TV screen. And so you're really trying to talk to 4 or 6% of voters who have yet to make up their mind. Because all polls show that people are 95% sure that they're not going to change their mind between now and election day.
Yeah.
Because the race has just been, so mature for so long.
Sure. And over to you, Ryan. Do you agree with that? And very much it's how these debates are spun, both before, during, but particularly after the event?
Well, I think no one should believe that the Trump campaign is not preparing for this debate, because another fact to be aware of is that even those who watch the debate may only watch the first part. And so it is very important for either candidate to come out swinging. And so that comes with preparation. That comes with being ready. And you're not going to have time to feel your way around the debate. We saw that with Joe Biden sometimes. He got stronger in the end than he was in the beginning. He can't afford that. And the same is true for Trump. Now, I think the spin is going to be crucial. As Michael said, and how each side comes out and what they're able to say about the debate is much more important than the debate itself.
Thank you for that, Ryan. Well, whilst we're all focusing, of course, on the debates, one of the things that we like to focus on in this show is the policy agenda, which of course matters to us all. So whilst we're focusing on that debate, the glitz and the showbiz of the election campaign, are other things going on in terms of policy? The law and order has been a big issue, but also the economy, COVID-19, the prospect of a vaccine, foreign affairs. We've had Trump's announcements of his successful facilitation of these peace accords with Israel. Are these other issues actually equally, if not more important, in terms of the campaign on the ground? Over to you, Michael, first of all.
Well, I think you've accurately assessed sort of the top 6 issues. The people that support Biden care about what's our plan for dealing with the virus. Kids aren't going to school. The economy's lost 28 million jobs. It all sort of is the gateway, and the Democratic candidates are running on the fact that Trump boggled this. There was a breathtaking book released with Trump in his own voice said that he knew that the pandemic was much worse than he was letting on in public domain. Yet he didn't move quickly to implement things that could have slowed the spread of it. So we spent the last week here talking about hearing about these charges back and forth, and it was in Trump's own voice, and so he had a hard time making it into fake news. But now he's bragging that of course he downplayed it because he didn't want to create panic. So his ability never to own a sentence that he just said is breathtakingly amazing to me.
And over to you, Ryan. Beyond the debate and the theatre around the debate, the other issues that perhaps are influencing the campaign?
Well, bear in mind that I think as of September 20th, the U.S. will start enforcing sanctions on Iran. So there is a lot of concern that a U.S.-Iran altercation over the next month potentially may also change the dynamic of the race. But I think I would agree with Michael that this Bob Woodward book has been the main driver of topics beyond the election for the last week or two. Last night in a town hall, Trump was asked questions based on what he said in his own words from the book. And his answer was he actually was upplaying the virus. And he had some trouble trying to counter his own words. So yes, there's a lot happening under the surface level in the election, and we need to be careful about things popping up now and then.
Yeah. And one of the other things we pride ourselves on this show is that we also like to take a deep dive into some issues as well if we can. So rather than just dealing with the here and now, but I think one of the other things we're fascinated here in Europe is trying to better understand American society. And we've made this point before that, America is arguably still the richest and the most successful nation on earth. So how did you become, really turning to Michael now, how did you become so divided a country and so angry? And that's really being shown in this campaign, the anger on both sides, no doubt amplified by the media, but you look like an angry country now. How did this come to pass?
Well, In my 30 years that I've lived in Washington, I've been a lifelong Democrat. The Republicans went after institutions of government for a generational period, and the lack of confidence in the government and attacking government institutions and norms. And after just years and years of reaping doubt, it's their small government philosophy, tax cuts and small government, and then degrading any institution in America. Just has its long-term coarsening effects. And our politics, when I first moved to Washington, you could actually talk to a moderate or someone on the other side of the aisle to get something done. Mm-hmm. We used to play, when I was a staffer on Capitol Hill, you could play softball games with people in the hallway because you lived this common life. Now, if a member of Congress or one party is seen in public talking to the other, they will get primaried on the other side for fraternizing with the enemy and quite possibly lose. It's because the politics have become so split that only the extremes of both sides win. And the other thing on electorally in the U.S. is every 10 years we change the boundaries for members of Congress based upon population shifts. And each 10-year cycle, we make the parties further and further into the corner. So there's no districts that a moderate needs to talk to both sides to come up the middle to win. 80% of these seats, I know I can tell you today how they're going to vote. There's not a chance that the other party takes those seats. And that just makes our government policies worse because everyone goes off to their sides.
You wouldn't agree, Michael, that surely the Democrats have to take some responsibility, under Clinton or Obama, for some of the divisions in society, which during their, long periods in office, they failed to bridge the divide, in America being such a divided society, rich and poor, those who feel they have influence and those that do not. I mean, one thing, for example, we don't understand is that, Trump to some extent, was he not a creature of Obama? I mean, Obama left the administration, but paved the way for Trump. Surely the Democrats have to take some responsibility.
Oh, I'm not saying the Democrats don't have responsibility, but we've had divided government for all but two of the last 20 years, right? When Obama won, he had a Democratic Senate with enough enough margin to go through a filibuster and a House, and he passed the healthcare, and then the healthcare became a whipping board for the other side, and then you don't really have a chance where you have these national unifying moments where government can go ahead and get people on both sides to agree. I mean, the last time you'd have to look to the 60s when, Kennedy was assassinated and you had the civil rights movement and Lyndon Johnson was able to get some monumental pieces of legislation passed. And that's, 50, 60 years ago now.
Mm. Over to you, Ryan. I mean, we've obviously been chewing over the rather divided society that America's become, but are you optimistic about the future?
Well, not really. And I think it's building on what Michael said. We don't really have any more politicians that can get a compromise, just go and talk to someone across the aisle and get an agreement, because they will then get killed in the next election. I know JFK wrote about this in his book way back when, that compromise was an act of bravery, but now compromise is an act of treachery. And Bill Clinton, for me, was the last president who could claim to have some skill of going across the aisle to get a compromise. Now, whether by talent or because of the environment was a lot less hostile, who knows? But I think it's tough to pin the blame on either side so much as to say both sides have benefited, have caused it. Certainly under Obama, there was an acceleration of this divide. The Tea Party came into existence at that time, and I think that really accelerated this whole thing of bridging this divide even more. So tough to say one side or the other, but I think there needs to be a long, hard look at both.
Well, thank you both for that. Not terribly optimistic, but nonetheless, it's good to have a deep dive in these conversations as well, so we can better understand the context within which the election campaign is being fought. As always on these shows, we conclude without letting you off the hook. You've both got to make that all-important prediction. Just over 6 weeks to go, so we're getting very close now. Start off with Ryan. Final word to Michael. Ryan, who's going to win?
Well, last week I made a fairly confident prediction on Joe Biden, and in the last week nothing has changed my mind. I still think the race is very locked in. There's not much movement, and what we're missing is the rumble and tumble of a campaign trail. So I don't think we'll see any changes until the first debate. Trump had a very poor town hall. That doesn't really seem to be changing much. I think the debates are going to be the main factor here. But for the time being, I'm still confident that we'll see a Joe Biden win. Thank
you, Ryan. Michael, who's going to win?
Yeah, I think it's still. I'd rather be Biden than Trump, but you don't count your chickens before they hatch, as they say. I think that the state-based polling in the last 2 weeks has shown that Biden continues to have an over 50 lead in the three states. If he flips Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, which he's over 50 in all three of those states, Trump has almost no path to getting the Electoral College. And Trump only won those three states by a combined sum of 72,000 votes out of 135 million cast. So, and Biden, the difference between Biden and Hillary at this point was Hillary was never over 50 in any of those states at any point in the polling. And when 95% of the voters say, my mind's made up, and the politician's over 50, the incumbent's stuck at 45, with 6+ weeks to go, short of a disastrous debate performance, like falling down off the stage, I don't know how you change that dynamic given how locked in people are.
Okay, well, that's pretty clear. Thank you both for giving us the benefit of your wisdom, advice, and your predictions. We really appreciate that. Thanks to all our viewers for tuning in again. I hope you like and you comment and you share. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and to ring that notification bell. But finally, to Ryan Hunter and to Michael Meehan, thank you so much for joining the show, making it the success that it is. And I hope you can join us next week. Thanks very much.
Thank you.